Okay, I'm Rebecca Beavers, class of 1993, preferred pronouns she, her, hers. We are in beautiful Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. We are actually in a place called Golden Gate Canyon State Park. So you're actually looking out on the Continental Divide right now. And one of the reasons I love it is this is one of the places that I have the benefit of being able to work from here. One thing during COVID is I can work from home sometimes, and this is definitely one of the places I call home. So in the past year, we decided to build a little tiny house. It's still closer to a she shed right now, but it gives us space for my office. But it also has a place for the kids to stay when we're up here too. So it's been a nice project, learning about insulation at higher altitudes, but also deciding to wait during the winter for doing in the plumbing. So it's pretty much what we would call a dry cabin. They're pretty common in Alaska, but you also do it at high altitude.
What inspired the tiny house?
Well, we've got a great spot here, but we didn't have as much space. And when you have a couple professionals working from home, multiple kids schooling from home, so all of a sudden you need just a little bit more space. And I'm hoping that we can work from home even more after the pandemic, because I think our offices are useful, but maybe not the only place we can work from. So for work, I am a coastal geologist with the U.S. National Park Service. We manage the parks all the way from Cape Cod National Seashore to Grand Canyon National Park to National Park of American Samoa. I have the benefit of working with all the coastal parks. I've done this for about 20 years. And so while I can live in Colorado, I travel to the coastal parks. And it's been an amazing experience being able to interestingly live very far away from sea level, once again in the mountains like Williamstown, but oftentimes my travel takes me to the coast. So that's probably the biggest challenge right now is I haven't been back to the beach much in the last year and a half.
Admittedly, when we were trying to select people, your title as a coastal geologist in Colorado was the thing that really piqued us. We were like, that seems like a very interesting pairing there.
Yeah.
So that's really cool and wonderful work. National Park Service, really fun stuff to work with.
And one interesting part of that is I think because of my field camp, even when I was at Williams, I struggled with having to go to field camp. I'm like, look, I've decided I'm going to be an oceanographer. Let me go on a ship. Let me go out offshore. And they're like, you need to go where you can actually see the rocks. So I went up to Red Lodge, Montana, loved it. Actually, have since been back as an instructor. And when this job came up in Denver, I'm like, well, I actually really had a lot of fun mapping in the Beartooth. Let's see what Colorado has to offer. And so it's been an interesting mix of living in the mountains, working at the coast. But I do get to work in some places like Yellowstone National Park, one of the largest alpine lakes in the U.S. is interior. Yeah, so my local community, I would say there are a couple ways. One is the outdoors, being able to get people out on hikes. I've done things such as the 52 Hike Challenge, and I've managed to take a lot of people out hiking with me. I love to do hiking, backpacking, camping, paddleboarding. So being able to get outdoors and being able to bring people into that experience has been really useful. But also another way to engage with the community is with some of the transgender and non-binary community. I happen to have a child who identifies within that spectrum. And it has been an interesting way to engage with the community and see where our society is set up so many ways and times with a gender binary. And when you have a child that's willing to really be bold and be themselves, it's amazing to see when their true nature shines and what we need to do to let so many more individuals shine with their own nature. That, to me, is another way I've been very involved with some of the community.
That is true labor and a labor of love, it sounds like. And I think both the outdoor and the work with the trans community is deeply meaningful for a lot of people. So Thank you for all of your time and effort in those causes. And I'm sure your child is very appreciative of all of that effort.
Yes, absolutely. There were certainly impactful experiences with individuals, but I'm also going to have to say, going back to that geoscience major, I also have to give a shout out to the biology, because I was a double major, didn't quite finish the environmental science concentration because I decided to double major. But the ability to travel with the Keck Geology Consortium and other areas, I mean, I managed to make it to the Bahamas twice, when I was an undergrad, I continued that work as a grad student and still presented. And so even the other connections there, my PhD advisor is a Williams alum. My undergrad advisor was also his advisor. So we have, some pretty strong connections, and even many of my coworkers have Williams geology connections. And so that is just phenomenal when it continues to allow you to connect even with the travel experiences, but also kind of that shared understanding of what it means to have a basic training in the Purple Valley, the Green Mountains, and I find myself back in the mountains even as a coastal geologist.
That's really wonderful, and I shout out to the Geos department as well. I'm one of them. It's so much fun. I similarly got inspired to stick with the Geos major because of travel. Got to go down to New Orleans and Louisiana for a bunch of research. So much fun. So now we've got 2 more questions for you that are a little bit different than the other ones. So the first one is, what brings you joy?
Joy is seeing people shine for their innate nature. I mentioned seeing one of my children shine. There's another one who is so engaged when he gets on a topic he wants to discuss. He is just, I think of, Mark Hopkins on the other side of a log, when you see your children grow up in that manner. But I think having those spaces where there's communication comes forward really helps me appreciate the role of education. I've also seen that in many places working for the National Park Service in the interpretation side. Being able to tell a story that people relate to, whether it's, Stonewall National Monument, whether we're going out in a national park and I'm trying to explain processes from a hurricane, relating to people, that connection on a personal level is what's so important. And I think that's where we make our difference.
Thank you. That's really beautiful and speaks to a lot of that work towards connecting people with the natural world, which is super important for a lot of reasons and is becoming more and more important these days with that little thing called climate change. But
yeah, I'm funded by the climate change program, so I get you on that one.
And so the last question we have for you is, if you could write a thank you note to anyone, who would it be to and what would it say?
Yeah, I would thank my advisor from Williams, Bill Fox, because he enabled me as an undergrad. I took an oceanography class, and all of a sudden there's this thing called winter study. Well, when I was at Williams, we had just experienced Hurricane Hugo, 1989, go through this area called the Carolinas. And so my home had been impacted. And so all of a sudden, that's where I actually saw the launch of a career. Bill's not with us anymore, so I'm going to thank Norma and his family. But he also lived across the street from me when I was a senior, and I lived on Moreland Street, and they brought Thanksgiving dinner to me. So it's a community, it's a connection. Thank you, Bill, and much more.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure Bill's very proud of everything that you've done and everything you will continue to do. It's been truly remarkable chatting with you about everything so far. You have a lot to be proud of and a lot of really fun, cool work. I'd love to talk to you on the side. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with anyone who comes across this?
Well, I'm just excited y'all are out and traveling and doing this. We've been traveling in a camper van a little bit, and I saw how ambitious your trip is. So keep it up, keep moving, and come on, let's have more of these stories. So I've got to say, you've gotten the alumni excited about this. So thank you very much.